do we have the data that actually shows who is in those concentrated poverty areas? Do we know, like, which group? Because I think, sometimes the assumption is that all of the poor people are black, and that's not true. And so, I just want, so I want, in our school system, which is a diverse school system, do we have data that shows which of the, subgroups or?
The student groups?
Yeah, the racial.
Sure. So we do, we are able to provide some data on where the concentrated poverty is within the county. But keeping in mind that our census tract data, we know that not everybody completed that census tract. So that data isn't as accurate as we would like.
So in 27406, the poverty rate is 42%.
How do we know that for certain if not everyone completed the census tract?
So that's like almost twice the rate of the state poverty rate. So concentrated poverty has more to do with who could live where decades ago. It also impacts generational poverty because kids who live in concentrated poverty are more likely to go to a Title I school where they have the least experienced teachers. I remember when Dr. Contreras gave one of the reports, and Dr. Oakley can say if we have that information now, but we had the least experienced teachers and the least effective teachers transferring into our most impacted schools. So then we're dealing with housing and all of the issues around housing, and then you're dealing with job deserts and health deserts and all that other stuff. And that compounding impact of concentrated poverty impacts generational poverty because you can't just a person can get out, but that group can't move. It's like quicksand. There's a book that Patrick Sharkey wrote called Stuck in Place around concentrated poverty, which has to do with where people could live decades ago. And I think we need to understand a whole lot more about that.
And they came out with a study, and it was 3 simple rules. I mean, part of this is we're teaching children, but we also want to teach them to make good decisions with their life because and these 3 things are key, and they've been proven to keep people out of poverty. That is, 1, graduate from high school. So that's good. The other is to get a job. The other thing, and probably maybe the more challenging, is for teenagers to not have a child before they're 21 years of age and to be married. And so those that followed those 3 simple rules, only 2% were in poverty.
Pat, I appreciate you bringing up that study, but it just makes no sense to me because there were more poor people that made that made all the right decisions and are still poor. We have millions of people in poverty that graduated from college, not just went to high school. We have employees right here that we've heard at this podium that have a college degree, that are bus drivers, that are poor.
Key things that will help us to accelerate learning. Making sure we have the supplies, the consumables. Our teachers have what they need to do their job. I do know we're challenged and we have teachers leaving and coming and leaving. We've got to stabilize our teachers and make sure they want to be here, they're going to work, whatever's causing any of that change, because every time we lose a teacher, that impacts the classroom. Okay. And then instructional hours. All right, I still have a problem with reducing instructional hours when we knew we had learning disability, because the only way to gain or for students to gain is having face-to-face learning. All children need to have every instructional hour at this time is valuable. And we need to make sure that we are utilizing our hours efficiently so that we are concentrated. I also have still heard complaints about discipline and feeling supported. So, I'm all about let's get our teachers stabilized and have a good working environment, more instructional hours, or utilize our instructional hours as effectively as we can, and make sure that we have the resources, the consumables, and anything else that they need as a priority.
And Linda, when you were saying we've got to stabilize our teaching force, well, when the school year started and I'm watching the news, and Mecklenburg has 400 vacancies and Durham and Wake have 200 vacancies and we have 29. And people are spreading rumors and giving misinformation that people are leaving in droves. And if we want our teachers to stay, we shouldn't accuse them of teaching pedophilia and racial indoctrination to students. We should vote for a budget with employee salaries and benefits. And we don't spread that misinformation. And we cannot address teacher pay with a board or a budget. It is a cultural issue. There's 14,000 school districts in the United States, and only 11, and not all the schools in those 11 districts, where veteran teachers can make $100,000 a year. Out of 14,000, 11. So until we're ready to value educators and value our school employees and give them the salaries and the incomes that they need to be able to work and to take care of themselves and their family and live in a good neighborhood and have access to good food and retire before they leave the earth, then we should stop trying to fix this every year. And I just think we need to do something pretty drastic about that. That we should be able to pay veteran teachers $100,000 a year. Our other teachers who are showing progress a substantial salary. We have to make education valuable and important, and we don't.
The chamber does in the state of the city that other people do. Is it possible, and I don't know if this is a task that the new superintendent wants to take on or not, but it sounds like to me from what you're saying, we need to be the voice to tell these other entities what the state of, poverty is as it relates to education. If you remember a few years ago, the chamber had a guy who came and talked about impact in the early childhood years, but nobody in his conversation, there was nothing about dollars. There was nothing about